Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are sinking our teeth into a really provocative paper, one that suggests the entire universe, everything we know, is built on a single, elegant, geometric foundation. So, let's just start with the big idea. What if everything, and I mean everything, from the tiniest particles to the fundamental forces that govern them, isn't about complex equations, but instead, it all just emerges from the pure geometry of one single shape? That's the core claim we're going to unpack.
And look, this isn't just some philosophical hand-waving. The paper claims that the geometry of this shape can be used to calculate the fine structure constant. That's a number that basically dictates how light and matter interact. And the calculation matches our best experimental measurements to a precision of 1 part in 326,000. That's shockingly accurate.
But it doesn't stop there. The framework also claims to derive the mass ratio between a proton and an electron, a value that is absolutely crucial for atoms to even exist. And it does it with an error of just 0.02%. And again, the argument is that this number just falls out of the properties of this one shape.
And here's the most audacious claim of all. It proposes that this single shape is the blueprint for the entire zoo of fundamental particles we see in the Standard Model. Basically, one shape to generate all of reality. Which, leads to the obvious question we're all thinking. How? How on earth could one simple geometric object possibly account for the staggering, mind-bending complexity of the entire physical universe?
Well, the paper's answer is an object that might be kind of familiar, especially if you've ever played a game of Dungeons & Dragons.
So, here it is, the crucial idea. According to this framework, reality isn't continuous, it's pixelated, and that fundamental pixel of reality is the octahedron. The shape with 6 points and 8 triangular faces. Everything we see is just a projection of this one single shape.
Okay, but why an octahedron? Why that specific shape? To get the logic here, we have to rewind all the way back to the foundations of quantum mechanics and face the puzzle that has been haunting physics for a century.
And that brings us to the famous measurement problem. See, at the quantum level, particles act like they exist in this weird haze of all possible states at once. It's called a superposition. But the instant we look at them, they snap into a single definite state. It's like the universe waits for an audience before it decides what to be. And this isn't a thought experiment. It's the most replicated result in the history of physics.
Now this is where the theory takes its first really radical step. The author looks at all the mainstream explanations for this mystery, ideas like many worlds where every possibility spawns into a universe, and argues they all fall short. The paper's conclusion is that consciousness isn't just some random byproduct of physics, it's a necessary ingredient that actually creates physical reality.
Okay, so let's just run with that for a second. If we accept the premise that a conscious observer is what makes reality real, then the next question is, what kind of reality gets created? And how does that get us to a specific shape?
Well, the logic follows this three-step chain. 1. Reality has to be made of discrete units, or pixels. 2. These pixels have to have certain properties, like being perfectly symmetrical. And 3. This is the big one. Their geometry has to match the numbers we've already discovered in particle physics.
And this is how they land on the octahedron. Here's how it works. Our best theory of physics, the Standard Model, tells us about the fundamental forces. The strong force, which holds atoms together, it's associated with the number 8. The weak force, which handles radioactive decay, that's associated with the number 3. So of the 5 perfect Platonic solids, only one, the octahedron, has properties that match both numbers perfectly, 8 faces and 3 main axes of symmetry. It's presented as this perfect geometric key to a physical lock.
So now that the shape has been selected, the paper takes this really extraordinary next step of mapping its pure geometry directly onto the properties of fundamental particles.
And here's maybe the most startling connection of all. If you measure the angle between any 2 adjacent faces of a perfect octahedron, the cosine of that angle is exactly -1/3. Well, guess what the fundamental unit of charge for a down-type quark is? Yep, exactly -1/3. The paper argues there's no way that's a coincidence.
And it goes even deeper. By assigning these fundamental quark charges to the octahedron's corners, the geometry itself creates a charge distribution across its faces that seems to explain why we see protons, neutrons, and electrons. The implication is huge. Maybe they aren't fundamentally different particles at all, but are just different viewing angles of this one single object.
So what about antimatter? Well, to explain that,
The framework introduces a mirror in a fifth dimension. A particle is just an octahedron on our side of this mirror, and its reflection is its antiparticle. It's a single geometric idea that tries to explain a bunch of deep physical principles at once, from why matter and antimatter destroy each other to why time seems to have a direction.
Okay, let's circle back to those shocking claims from the beginning. Let's look at how the pure geometry of this octahedron allegedly spits out some of the most fundamental and mysterious constants in all of nature.
A key claim here is that the theory can derive these numbers with zero adjustable parameters, no fudge factors, no cheating. For instance, the Weinberg angle, a number that connects two of nature's forces, supposedly comes from simple ratios of the octahedron's parts. And that proton-to-electron mass ratio? The paper proposes it's a simple formula, 6 times pi to the 5th power, where each number allegedly has a direct geometric meaning.
And here's the crown jewel. Its calculation for the inverse fine structure constant, a number the great physicist Richard Feynman called one of the greatest damn mysteries of physics, is derived from a formula using only pi, the square root of 2, and numbers pulled from the octahedron's geometry. The result matches the measured value to an absolutely astonishing 1 part in 326,000.
Of course, a speculative framework like this is only as good as its predictions. You can't just explain what we already know. And this one makes several really bold, testable claims that could either prove it right or prove it dead wrong.
And this is where the rubber really meets the road. Unlike a lot of speculative theories, this one can be definitively tested. It predicts that magnetic monopoles, these hypothetical particles with only one magnetic pole, are a geometric impossibility. They will never be found. It also makes a very specific prediction about the guts of a proton that's going to be tested at the new electron-ion collider. If those experiments find something different, the whole theory just fails.
And the entire paper, after all this complex physics and geometry, culminates in this one single profound equation. It suggests that existence itself, that symbol on the right, is not a substance. It's a relationship, the ratio of infinite potential, omega, to the act of conscious observation, omega prime.
And this leaves us with this final, truly provocative thought that completely reframes reality. It suggests the universe isn't some pre-existing stage that we just happen to live on. Instead, it's a continuous act of cosmic self-perception, a geometric reflection born from the very act of looking.